All right, so we're going to continue here with the second video on this. So after we have, where we were talking about last video is that the people were now in slavery in Egypt. Oh, now did I go to the previous? Let me just check now. No, I'm going backwards here. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that they were enslaved in Egypt. Okay. Now this is the time of where it's often referred to as the Golden Age in Egypt, from about 1550 to 1150 is referred to as the Golden Age. And this is where they have the massive building campaign going on. And so the Egyptians had used slaves for the building of the various palaces and pyramids and what have you. And it seems that the Hebrews were probably a part of this situation. And so we have here the figure of Moses that becomes very important in the history of Judaism and the birthing and launching of a new covenant known as the Sinaitic Covenant, excuse me, which is going to happen with a revelation taking place at Mount Sinai, where the Torah meaning the law, is being given to Moses, to the people, and these laws are going to be a part of the contract that they're going to enter into. But this will all happen after they are set free from slavery. And so the context of the story here with Moses is that he is going to be a key figure, as I have here. You know, there's going to be elements about his birth that are amazing. The whole burning bush event where God speaks to him through this bush and he's called to become a prophet. And then he is also, God reveals his holy name, and then is also called to lead the people out of slavery from Egypt. That's known as the Exodus event. And then once they're out of Egypt, there's a revelation that takes place at Mount Sinai where the Torah is given, these laws and commandments, and that's where they enter into this new contract, another contract, but as a people, as a whole, as a collective whole, known as the Cyanatic Covenant. So these are all the different key elements here in Moses's life. So how the story begins here is that the Egyptians were finding that the Hebrew people just always had too many children and there was just too many of them. So they instituted a policy that all Hebrew boys should be put to death at birth. So when the midwives are assisting the Hebrew women in giving birth to a child, they were told that if they see that it's a boy, that they are to, sort of strangle it and say to the mother, "Oh, I'm so sorry, it was a stillbirth, your child didn't make it," or something or other. All right, that they were to kill all the boys at birth. Well, the story is that the midwife for Moses's mother couldn't do it, and she told the mother that, this is the game here. I'm supposed to kill your son, but I don't want to. We've got to figure something out here. And so what they did is they devised a plan that they would put Moses into a basket and put him along the Nile River there at a certain time in the afternoon when the Pharaoh's daughter would be going for her afternoon stroll, and that she would hopefully, find the baby and save the baby. Okay. And so this is the story, and so it's held that this is what takes place. As she's strolling along the river one day, she hears a baby crying, and it's a baby Moses, and they bring in the baby, and the girl says, one of her servants says, we need to find a mother who could be nursing the baby, who maybe just lost a baby. And the story is that she was able to then get Moses's mother to actually then nurse the baby. And so Moses then is raised in the household of the Pharaoh under the guidance of the Pharaoh's daughter. So he basically is raised amongst the Egyptians here in the Pharaoh household. So that's sort of the story about Moses's birth, okay, which is a classic hero journeys type of story, right? Now, what happens then is he grows up to be a young man, and as he's walking out on the streets one day, he sees an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave, and he intervenes to stop him from beating the Egyptian slave and ends up killing him. And so he then hides the body, buries the body somewhere, and hopes nobody knows. But however, somebody found out, and he knew that, he's going to be, put to death for having done this. And so he has to now escape and run away from wherever he was in Egypt here. Okay, he runs for his life. Okay, that's the story. So the next phase of the story is he goes into another area, And there he eventually gets married. He's looking after some sheep for his father-in-law, and he's out there looking after these sheep. And he has this experience of a strange thing going on, this bush that catches fire and just keeps burning. And that can happen at times in the desert. I remember reading an article once in the Globe and Mail that there are certain bushes, when they dry out, they become rather hollow. The twigs become hollow, and they have a type of methane gas internally. And they can just all of a sudden, from the heat of the sun, just catch on fire and burn up. And however, what Moses looked at this bush, it's like, yeah, okay, it caught fire, but usually the fire dies out after a while. This fire didn't die out. It kept burning and burning and burning. Like there's something spooky, weird about this burning bush. So he goes over towards the bush, and then he hears this voice speaking out of this bush. And the bush says, "This is holy ground. Take off your shoes." And the voice speaks and says, "I am the God of your ancestors, your forefathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And I have seen that my people are in slavery under the Egyptians, suffering under the slavery. I now want to set them free. And you, Moses, I want you to go to the Pharaoh to tell him to let my people go." And Moses is like, can you imagine? He's like, well, you got to be kidding me. And anyway, there's quite a dialogue that goes on where he doesn't want to do it. He's scared. It's like, are you kidding me, to go to the Pharaoh and to tell him? It's like, why would he believe me? And I stutter. I have a stuttering problem. Send maybe my brother who can speak well. He's trying to get out of this. But the key things that happen here is, number one, Moses is called to be God's messenger, a messenger for God, and that is what a prophet is. A prophet is someone who speaks on God's behalf, who has a message from God to bring to certain people. Okay, so in the biblical tradition, Moses is held to be the first prophet, the first person called to be a spokesperson on God's behalf. And that's going to play an important role. This whole idea of there being prophets bringing messages from God, okay, is going to become very important here in the whole biblical tradition. And so that's number one that happens here. The second thing that happens is that Moses says, well, okay, sure, you're the God of my ancestors, but who are you? What should I tell them? What is your name? Right? So he really asks to get the name of God. And this is where God reveals what's to be known as the holy name of God. And in Hebrew, in ancient Hebrew, there were just consonants and no vowels. And the four consonants are, YHWH in English. And in Hebrew, it's a name or word that is very existential. Okay, it's I am that I am. Or it could be in a future tense, I will be what I will be. It's a very existential, ontological kind of name of just pure beingness. That is the very name of God, is just pure beingness. And this is a holy name, never to be taken in vain. Okay, and this becomes one of the commandments. You always hold that God's name in reverence. And just as a side note here, in the ancient world, it's held that the name of something or someone carries the essence of their being. And this was tied in with magic. If you can have the right word that is the name of something, you can then potentially control that something. Okay, I'm just going to put my face back up here. You can control that being or that object or that thing or that animal if you have its name. There is power in knowing the name of someone or something. And that's a key aspect here, is that you dare not ever think that you can have power over God or control God. And that basically is a statement against magic in a sense. Is that you can manipulate the gods, you can manipulate and control gods and spirits according to your desires. It's like, no, it goes the other way around. God is in control, not you as a human in that sense, right? There needs to be always that sense of reverence to who really is the power here, not you, it's God, okay? So this is a key thing here. And anyways, I could babble on about things, but this is also what's behind in the Genesis creation account, where it describes God creating Adam and Eve, the first man and woman, and that he tells them that you have dominion over the earth, and tells them, go forth and give names to the animals. So that implying that you are in power over this planet Earth and can have potential control, dominion, authority over the realm of nature, over the realm of animals here on Earth. Okay. So that's something just that most people aren't aware of, that the importance of naming here and what's behind it. Okay. So anyways, this is what happens here is we have the revelation of God's name in the burning bush, and Moses being called to be a messenger, a prophet. And so Moses does indeed, he goes to the Pharaoh and tells the Pharaoh, listen, the God of my ancestors has spoken, you're to let the people go. And again, long story short, the Pharaoh always refuses time and time and time again. Okay. And so what happens is that he's warned, if you refuse, disaster will fall upon the land of Egypt. Okay. And the Pharaoh says, oh, get out of here, no way. And so what happens? There is the first of 10 plagues. The river Nile turns red, turns into blood. It's described like turning red like blood. And then whoever drinks of that water dies. It becomes poisonous and toxic. And so after this plague hits, then Moses goes to the Pharaoh, okay, you refuse to let the people go. Are you ready now? And the Pharaoh says, no, I'm not letting the people go. Then a second plague took place, and that's all these frogs came up all over the place and taking over everything. And again, he approached the Pharaoh. Would you let the people go? No. And then the third one were gnats. Okay, these bugs and lice going all over. And then goes again, the swarm of flies, and then animals getting sick and dying, and people being covered with boils, and hail coming from the skies, and locusts coming in. And then all of a sudden, everything turns into darkness. This is like one day after another. I don't know if it's exactly a day, but event after event after each time where the Pharaoh refused to let the people go. Okay. And then after the 9th time, all right, it's a little bit different, where God tells Moses to tell the Hebrew people that today you must sacrifice a lamb and you're going to make supper out of them, roast the lamb, okay, and everyone will eat this as your meal. But before that, you will smear some of the blood of the lamb on the doorpost, okay, of your homes. And tonight, the angel of death is going to visit Egypt. And if the angel of death sees the blood of the lamb on your doorpost, the angel of death will pass over your house and only visit those houses that don't have that, i.e. the Egyptian homes. Okay. And this is where the Jewish Passover comes from. And so it's held that when the angel of death visits the land of Egypt, all the firstborn sons are dead. They're found dead in the morning. And so when the Pharaoh wakes up and he sees that his oldest son, his firstborn son, is dead, he just loses it. All right, he's had it. And he says, bring that Moses to me. And says, yes, Moses, get out of here. I want all you and all your people out of here. Okay. And so they then have to do a quick pack and leave. All right. And they rush and leave out of Egypt. Okay. So these are sort of the 10 plagues. Now, just as a side note, I saw a video just recently about this, and then also in the past. And there's different documentaries and whatnot, and I'm going to list some for you. But what's quite interesting here, and what seems really probable, is that, for example, in one documentary, the way they presented it, they presented this as a result of volcanic activity, in the sense that a volcano erupting, and then what came out of that went into the water that made it red and toxic. They described in all detail. And that then affected the ecosystem, that the frogs then left all the waters and invaded the land, that then led to the gnats and flies, and then the animals getting sick with a disease and boils and hail coming from volcanic kind of a hail, and the locusts and the darkness coming through volcanic ash, and all these sorts of things happen. And then the last one, in this one documentary, not in another documentary, that they had, I have seen 2 different ones, and one of them has said that as a result of all these things, there was a certain type of fungus that would have grown on the grains, and that it was a tradition that when you daily get the grain and you grind it, you make flour, you make your bread, and it would be given to the oldest son. They'd be the first one to eat that bread. And so if this toxic mold was on there and they ate it, they would have had food poisoning and died. I forget what they had in the other documentary, but it's interesting that different documentaries have kind of pieced together the impact of volcanic activity, which there definitely was there's been all over the world volcanic activity that could help us to understand how this all could have happened like this and make some sense of it. Okay. Anyway, so that's the 10 plagues. So they are now running, leaving Egypt, being set free from slavery. Okay. And let me just move this up again here. So as they're leaving, the Pharaoh, he all of a sudden gets angry and changes his mind and says, you know what, I want to kill those guys. Let's go after them and destroy them, because he was just so angry with the loss of his son. And so this is where they're fleeing, and they eventually they'll see like a cloud. Maybe I'm going to show myself here again. A cloud of dust, in the background, and up ahead, they hit a wall of water that traditionally has been referred to as the Red Sea. There's some debate if it actually is the Red Sea, because in Hebrew, the word means the Sea of Reeds. It could be a different kind of area. Again, there's going to be documentaries on this that are very interesting stuff that has been found in terms of chariot wheels in the water of the Red Sea and things like that, which is quite interesting. But anyways, the story is that they have behind them the Egyptians coming. They are in front. They have this wall of water of some kind that they need to cross, and they're trapped. And the story is that a miracle takes place, that with Moses putting his staff on the water, it parted the Red Sea, made a way for the water to move to the side that they could cross over. And then in the story is that they're crossing over on some dry land with the water pushed to the side. And then the Egyptians are coming in behind them, and they just get over to the other side it seems like the Sinai Peninsula, and that the Egyptians didn't quite make it, and they get then overtaken by the waters. The waters come back and drown the Egyptians. Okay. And so that's sort of the story here. And what's interesting is that there is a stele, a monument that has written in there that Israel was laid to waste, its seed is no more, as though the Egyptians have conquered and destroyed the Hebrews, which maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But it's interesting that there actually is historical reference like that from the Egyptians. Okay. So then, now they're on the Sinai Peninsula, is the story here. And it's described that God leads them by day by a pillar, by a cloud of fire, and by night by a pillar of fire. A pillar of cloud during the day and a pillar of fire at night. And so they're led by God. And eventually this pillar of fire and smoke or cloud lands on top of this mountain, Mount Sinai, and becomes immense. And again, I'm really trying to give you briefly the whole story. There's a lot of stuff here, okay? Where Moses is then led to go up to the top of this mountain, and that's where God reveals to him the commandments, not just the 10 commandments, but all kinds of laws is the tradition here. And this is referred to as the giving of the Torah. Torah literally means commandments or the law or teachings, okay? But basically instructions, okay? Instructions for how the people are to live, what they're supposed to do, okay? They're instructions that are interpreted as commandments, okay? And it becomes a type of contract, as I mentioned, a new contract, a covenant between the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, now with all of the descendants of Jacob, the 12 tribes of Israel, all the sons of Jacob, right? They become the 12 tribes of Israel, that all of these descendants as a collective Okay, maybe I should, I don't know if it makes any difference if I show my face here, but it's that larger collective of people that they are now invited into this contract. And this contract, the Cyanatic Covenant, is far more complex. There's a lot more involved. The one with Abraham was very simple. It was simply, it's usually referred to as a unilateral covenant. I think I have that on the next slide where, well, no, that's, okay, yeah. It was unilateral with Abraham, i.e., it was just from God promising to Abraham, and all they had to do was circumcise the boys, okay? That was a stamp of the contract, a seal of it. This one is bilateral. You know, there's things that God will do, but there's things you got to do, okay? It's a two-way kind of a contract, okay? And I'm just going to go back here. And so in this contract, it's all in the book of Exodus, in the Torah, in the Jewish Bible, in the first 5 books of Moses they're referred to. We have the 10 Commandments, which a lot of people know, and that's on the next slide. But later on, in rabbinic tradition, they'll count and add up all the different instructions or commandments that are given, and the tradition is that there are 613 altogether. And they basically are divided into either being religious laws or social laws. Okay, and I'll talk more about that in a couple of slides. Okay, and the 10 Commandments, they basically sum up the essence of all of the laws. They kind of are, you know, you can almost think of them like a type of constitution, the fundamental principles operating behind all of the laws. Okay, they're very foundational to them. Those are the 10 Commandments. And so then on one hand, you have religious laws, and on the other hand, you have social laws. Those are laws for God, okay, and then for man or humans. And so you can just read them here, that, you know, that I am the Lord thy God. Thou shalt not have any other foreign gods before me, i.e., you cannot worship any other gods other than the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, okay, the God of this contract. You are to be committed to this God alone, okay? And this is, and think of it, I like to really think of it as a marriage contract. It's a contract of commitment. You commit yourself to worshiping this God alone, and this God is going to be committed to you as a people, to be loyal to you, to protect you, guide you, and provide for you, right? It's like a two-way contract of mutual commitment. That's a key thing here. He's not saying that, other people can't worship other gods. That's not what's being said at this point. No. It's like, yeah, other people, they've got their gods, and that's their business, that's their thing. This is a contract just between the God of Israel and the people of Israel, okay? It's not a contract between God and all the people on the planet, all right? People don't realize that. It's just meant for the people of Israel, okay? The children of Israel, or the Israelites, okay? The Hebrews. So anyways, you shall worship no other God but me, number 1. I better keep a tab on time, okay. Number 2, do not take God's name in vain, all right? His name is holy. You don't flippantly say God's name in ways, all right? And so therefore, for even a devout Jewish person, they would usually write God with G-D. They avoid even coming close to saying God's name. And they'll often then sometimes refer later on to God as, you know, the ancient one, heaven. You know, they'll often use more abstract terms to refer to God, to make sure they don't even come close to saying the name of God. Okay. And number 3, that you keep the 7th day as a day of rest and keep it holy. Okay, the 7th day is a day of rest. Right? Now that's very interesting, because, you know, when you think of other cultures and societies, I mean, we take it so for granted. The whole Western system is rooted in this, that we have 7 days of the week, you know, that we have the idea of a weekend, a day of rest. You know, it used to be Sundays, no stores were open. Okay, on Sundays, that was sort of the 7th day, because again, Christianized to Sunday. Instead of the Jewish, in Israel, it would be Saturday is the Sabbath, okay, the day of rest, right? And you have that, that's very much embedded in the Western tradition. So these are the religious laws, okay? And on the right, for the social laws, is to honor your parents, okay, always to respect and honor your parents, to not kill, to not commit adultery, to not steal, to not lie, bear false witness, all right, to not covet, your neighbor's wife or your neighbor's goods. That is like, being jealous and wanting other people's possessions, right? So again, it is commit to, like I say, and it's often summed up, to love God and to love your neighbor as yourself, right? Sort of the foundation. Okay. So with this in more detail here, in this covenant, as I mentioned, it's a type of marriage contract. And it was like an invitation given to the people. I will be your God if you will be my people, okay? Called by my name. And the name of God is holy. God's name is holy. God is holy. And so if God is holy, you as a people need to be holy if you're going to be my people called by my name. So the people are meant to reflect the character, the nature, the attributes in various ways of God, because they worship a holy God. And I'm just going to open some, because they are worshiping a God who is holy, who's committed to justice and righteousness. All right. Then you as a people need to be committed to justice and righteousness. And that's why the Western traditions here, they become quite, the law is so important. Legality, justice, social justice is so important. Okay, here. Like you don't see that emphasized, say, in Hinduism with the Hindu gods and that, for example, just to compare and contrast. Okay, you don't get this kind of thing happening there. Here is very important. How you live matters. You are called to be a holy people, to follow certain laws, to not do evil. And that's why you get this emphasis on God as judge, okay, because of this kind of emphasis on righteousness, right? So, so you are to be holy as I am holy, a holy nation in the kingdom of priests. And this phrase that gets used here in the covenant is something that's going to become very important later on in rabbinic Judaism. They're going to see this as their mission, that their goal is to literally become a holy nation, a kingdom of priests. Okay, just so you know, that's going to become very important. It was important then, but very important later in rabbinic Judaism. So here in the first few books about it, we've got Genesis and Exodus and Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Numbers. The first 5 books of the Bible are called the 5 books of Moses. Okay, here there's a couple of chapters of these books here that really flesh out more this contract to have an idea. But so to be a part of this contract, that you're entering into this commitment of marriage and mutual commitment. Okay, you don't worship other gods, but only this God. Okay, and then you reflect his holiness by following these commandments, and then God will protect you and provide for you. Okay, so to obey the commands, love God with all your strength, soul, and mind, you will be blessed. If you obey these laws and are loyal to the contract, you will be prosperous, protected, fruitful, successful, blessed. But if you break the covenant, if you don't worship God alone, if you don't follow the laws, there's big consequence. This is very serious, this contract. You will be cursed and destruction will come upon you until you repent. And so you're invited this day. Are you willing to enter into this very serious contract? Choose this day. It's going to be life or death. Right? So it's held to be very important. And what's also tied in with this is the idea that the God of Israel, of these people, he earned the right to put in place this contract. Why? Because he is the one that saved them, took them out of slavery in Egypt. They would otherwise have been stuck in Egypt, remained slaves. But he earned the right to ask and invite for this kind of commitment because he set them free from bondage, from being slaves in Egypt, and has a promise of freedom, the promise of success, prosperity, their own land, their own freedom and independence as a nation. Okay, and in return, they are to be a holy and just people and to worship the one God alone. Right, that's sort of the idea here. Okay, so this is what gets set up here in this contract. And so, as I mentioned, there's 613 laws. There are either religious laws or moral laws. And just to give you a bit of an idea, and there's a lot involved with all this, okay? I go into too much detail and everything. So you've got laws, religious laws, just to give you an idea. Well, okay, there's going to be priesthood. Well, what's involved in being priest? Who becomes a priest? What kind of rituals do they do? What's all involved in the clothing they wear, the rituals, et cetera, et cetera. Then there's going to be the holy place. And at first, it's just a portable type of holy place known as a tabernacle, something that they will carry with them and just set up in the desert until a permanent temple gets built. Then there'll be special holy days and festivals that they're to keep, various rituals, sacrifices, and offerings that they're to keep, okay? Dietary laws that they are to follow, right? And I'll kind of explain all this more, I think, in another video, because it's kind of, my voice is going. And then there's moral laws, like in terms of human relationships and things, and with marriage and divorce, inheritance, property, all these sorts of things. And just to give you a bit of an idea, we here in the West, we talk about sabbatical, having a sabbatical, like, we use it at Douglas and other places, universities, usually you have a sabbatical year. Every 7th year as a professor, you can have that year off just to do research. And it's a way of replenishing yourself, rejuvenating yourself, doing more, intense research on things, okay? And so that has its roots here in the Jewish tradition, where every 7th year, the land is to have a period of rest. Just like humans to rest the 7th day of the week, every 7th year, the land needs to rest in order to rejuvenate and become enriched in its soil. But also, all slaves are to be freed. All right, and this is one thing people don't realize. Slavery has been all over on this planet in all cultures and societies across time. Okay, it's been very much a normative thing throughout the world. All right, it's not just over in America at one point, it's all over the world. It was the norm. Okay, so every 7th year, all slaves were to be set free and all debts were to be canceled. And so it's a way of here, just for the economy and for society, it was a corrective for the tendency for certain people to become in bondage to slavery and stay stuck there, getting more and more in debt, and there's no way out for them, okay, and being stuck there, and the few getting richer and richer off of that, right, is meant to correct that. And that's where every 50th year, which is 7 times 7, okay, is 49, and then the 50th year is the year of Jubilee. What's also to happen then is all property is to be returned to the original owners or their descendants. So again, it is a corrective to, say, for example, an area hits really bad times, a drought hits a region, and farmer after farmer has to sell their land to Joe over there, and he's just making the money. He's buying up the whole valley, okay, during this time of drought. Okay, so then you have the masses being poor and the few elite being super rich and powerful. This is meant to correct that kind of imbalance that happens. Okay, so there's a lot of interesting things here. And then also, just to kind of highlight, what most people don't realize, I think I always find some things. One of the dietary laws is not to eat torn flesh. Now, what was common in the ancient world is, you have one cow and you've got your family and you're hungry. Well, what do? You don't have a refrigerator. You don't have a freezer to freeze the meat if you kill the cow. So what they would do is just slice off a chunk off the belly of the cow. And that's going to be our steak for tonight, folks. And then patch it up with some tar so the cow doesn't bleed to death, right? And then day by day, they would chop off pieces of that cow as long as they could and keep it still alive while they would eat. Okay, that was kind of a common thing that was done, right? And so this becomes a commandment to not do that, that there be not the suffering of animals in through all of this, okay? That if you are to kill an animal, or if you're going to eat meat, the animal must be killed completely and swiftly, all right? And not in this type of a way, right? So you've got a lot of interesting things here that come in play. But I think I am going to, let me just see here. I've got just a lot of stuff going on. I think I'm going to just end for there for now and continue another time. Okay. All right. That's it for now.